Now, hi there. The Women's Health Service set up in the early 90s as a result of, I suppose, heroin using women who were out working on the streets or involved in prostitution on the streets due to mainly their heroin use and their lack of finances around that. That drastically changed around 2000.
Ireland, it's hard to hear you.
Can you not hear?
You have to project.
Will I pull it forward a little bit? Oh, is it now?
Here, sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Your
Okay.
voice
I was just saying there in the say 91, I think the service was set up mainly for women involved in prostitution who were heroin users, and it was a big financial issue for women to get money for heroin. That drastically changed around 2000. Sorry, my dates. Yeah, around 2000 when I started the Women's Health Service. I started as a nurse there, and we were sort of seeing women coming in regularly. And what we began to notice is, in fact, there's more immigrant women coming in more than Irish women, and now the figures are a huge proportion of immigrant women in prostitution compared to that of Irish women. So the service has changed to suit that need. What we also saw then in the early 2001, I think, was our first victim of trafficking who came into the service. The service is predominantly a sexual health and support service for women involved in prostitution. Victims of trafficking then, even around 2008, we only really began to, along with the legislation here in Ireland, we really only began to sort of look, have we really got a problem here with trafficking? We'd been meeting up maybe biannually to have a look and see how many people had come into services with victims of trafficking, and really only around the 2008, apart from Ruhama, did services get kicked in to support victims. What we saw this year now to date, January to August 2011, we had approximately 260 women attending the services. 225 of them were international and 33 were Irish or from the UK. So that just gives you an idea of how it has actually changed. What we see, I suppose, what I was very involved around 2009 in setting up the care plan for victims of trafficking, the statutory care plan for victims of trafficking. So what I saw there, I suppose, was that that's an all-consuming, we really would like to get it right here. We really see how the sort of state involvement, working with police, working with, as Patrick says, social welfare officers, would be ideal. It's actually in reality not really working that way, to be fair. You know, we're doing our best, but we haven't got there yet. So really, I suppose what I saw was that real impact of what prostitution does to women. And I suppose we're looking at, you know, areas of the psychological, the physical, and what I see more and more, whether victims are trafficked or whether they're in prostitution, is that sort of social disconnection from family, really, and from their lives, their whole setup of what they thought they were about. They're just a changed person, is all I can say. I'm, you know, 10 years looking at women coming in and out to that service now, and where you see a young woman coming in, fairly confident, fairly verbal, able to express, able to say, and after a period of time you notice the deterioration in that person, and that's the sadness. And after a longer period of time I notice that they're not only have difficulties themselves, but they're disconnected from family, friends back home. So their life as it was is completely changed, and they are then grappling with the effects of prostitution, effects of the physical and psychological effects on them, and also how do you sort of reintegrate them into society, get them back into some sort of confident state to be able to enter the normal workforce. And I suppose that's the difficulty that I see, because we have women from, a large percentage of our women are from Brazil, and they're over here in Ireland, and you're thinking, all you do is working in apartments. They'll tell you themselves they don't go out, they don't socialise, they don't mix because they're here for a reason, or organised here for a reason, or, you know, watch the wording on that. And I kind of think, well, how do you survive? You're obviously everyone's desperate for money. People don't have enough income in their countries of origin. Some have been coerced, some have been trafficked. So within the whole group, you're really wondering how do they get themselves out of that. And sort of, you know, a lady was speaking about that sort of discussion here in Ireland. Has that taken place? I would say all of the women that I've met, all of them have a dire need for money. And what I'm noticing now more and more is that it's not just for themselves, but it's actually for whole extended families. So, you know, Thursday night there I was working with a woman, and she's now paying for funding health services. Her sister is a dentist in Brazil, that was it. Her sister is a dentist, and she's funding the setup of the practice in Brazil. And whilst that's very honourable and nice on her, I just thought what a pressure that is, that now to support families and support careers of extended family, that women are having to work more and more and more here. And I said, how long more do you think you really need to stay here? And she said, it'd probably be another 2 years. And I just wondered what going to happen to her in that 2 years, and what kind of person she's going to be at the end of that. What we've seen in terms of trends, that initially we had victims of trafficking coming in off the street, mainly African, Nigerian, still a huge population, coming in, leaving brothels and coming straight into us. We don't see that now. Mostly people who have been trafficked are referred in either by the HSE services or Ruhama. We see an increase in Irish women now out in the streets, again down to recession, and women out basically saying we have to be out working for school uniforms again, and you can see that more and more evident on the streets. And again, of course, the international perspective, more and more international. Initiatives that were in the Women's Health Service, I suppose 3 main things we're doing. It's a sort of a rotation. It's kind of got an extended pilot pilot program or whatever, where we have the Immigrant Council coming in, doing legal advice, being on the premises when women coming into the clinics, that they're available, able to give them legal advice, direct legal advice. The second is the Ruhama coming in and being present. Whilst we ourselves are not doing any exiting work, which I think is absolutely crucial. You can't run services like ours, dishing out condoms, doing sexual health, taking sexual health screens, if you're only doing that part of it. You have to make the circle complete. And if we're not doing that ourselves, I think it's really important that we're working in partnership with another agency who are. So thankfully Ruhama are coming in on a fortnightly basis. Again, very crucial to meet the person when they're there, when they're in a service. That's when you get them. You just need to make a contact, and then there's a possibility of meeting people again and doing developmental work. And finally, the last one is with the Gardaí. We've had a liaison with the Gardaí, Shauna and Karen down the back. They'll have to introduce their own division in the questions and answers maybe. And so where Gardaí are not in this, just in the corridor basically, they're available to answer questions, able to support women who have been robbed, raped, have any issues of concern. And that's kind of very important as well. I do actually think that's really working. It's sort of breaking down those barriers, but maybe not necessarily there. Women are always afraid, of course, of the Gardaí or the police. We call them the Gardaí here, you probably know, for visitors. Very concerned about the Gardaí, and rightly so. I'd be concerned if I was them as well, I mean, fairness. So it's just important, I think, that breakdown to see, well, actually, there is somewhere you can go, and there is possibilities if you have been a victim of crime also. So I think that's really it. Just also to say it's really refreshing to see the Swedish model back in town here, and it's just great. It's just an inspiration, and the Norwegian as well, with the same ideas and concepts around prostitution and trafficking. So thank you.
Thanks, Linda.